Hello, souls and demons. Today's story is called Bound by Blood, written by getyaisha. So you know the drill by now, sit back, grip your seats, and enjoy. This all started a few months ago when a group of 4 hikers went missing in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. I've been a ranger here for the last 5 years, and this happens a lot more often than you would think. Typically, the lost party is found within the first few hours of the search, but occasionally someone will get so turned around out there it takes a few days to find them. For the most part, they're usually just scared and confused and found unharmed. But this last group wasn't like the others. It took us 9 days to find them and only one of them survived. This wasn't a group of weekend hikers. The whole group were experienced veterans. There was no reason for them to end up where they did. Abigail Myers was the lone survivor. She was found in the mountains dehydrated and malnourished. There were several strange markings carved into her forehead and palms. When she was finally able to speak, her statement was the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. The group consisted of Christina and Jeffrey Hines, Frank McCarthy, and Abigail Myers. They were on a 1-week excursion, training for one of those survival shows. They were 3 days in when 2 women came back to their camp and asked for help finding the other half of their group. After a quick search, they found 2 other women by the river. Once their group was back together, Miss Myers and her group went back to their camp and the others went on their way. Later that night, one of the women came back to their camp with some fresh water and fish as a thanks for help. After eating the fish that night, they all got sick and passed out. When she came to, they were tied up in a cave. What you're about to hear is her account in her words. I bypassed the initial interview to save time. Once we ate all the fish, all I can remember is waking up in the cave. I was tied up laying on the ground, facing Frank. There was blood on his face from the symbol that was carved into his forehead. A triangle with 3 lines running through it. I could see Christina, but her back was facing me. And I didn't see Jeff anywhere. We were all gagged, and I didn't hear anything for the first 2 days. Then on day 3, they came to get Frank and gave us water. It was those women from the river. They were all dressed different now, but I know it was them. I remember the one with the white hair. I think her name was Cassie, but it's hard to remember. I'm not sure. Anyway, once they took Frank, they didn't come back for another 2 days. When they came back this time, there was only 3 of them and they were arguing. Something about a deal not working. I couldn't really understand what they were saying at first. That's when I heard one of them say Shelby wasn't a part of the deal, and that this thing would kill them all. After that, Cassie came in and carved a symbol on my face, while the other 2 took Christina away. When she was finished, she took off my gag and fed me dried apple slices and water. I begged her to let me go, but she never said a word. When I was done, she tied the gag back in place and left. All 3 of them came back that same night, only this time they were carrying the one with the red hair. I think her name was Marie. Her left leg was torn up bad. I could see the broken bone poking out through the skin. The one with the long black hair had claw marks across her face, and Cassie was bleeding from a bunch of different wounds, but she seemed the least hurt. Once they had Marie settled in, Cassie used blood from all 3 of them to draw symbols around the entrance to the cave, while she muttered something under her breath. When she was finished, they started arguing again. From what I could tell, they were just supposed to be passing through, but they ran into something called a Wendigo. Whatever it was, it had killed one member of their group, and now they were hiding out in the cave, with me trying to come up with a way to escape. They argued back and forth for a while. I couldn't keep up with all of it, but it didn't really matter. That thing, the Wendigo, it showed up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm not crazy, I know what I saw, and when I tell you that the thing wasn't of this world, I need you to believe me. It was so tall its antlers scraped the ceiling of the cave. Its body looked like it was decaying and it smelled horrible. At first it didn't move. It just stood there blocking the entrance of the cave, looking at the symbols written in blood. Its arms were so long its knuckles touched the floor. Its head looked like a cross between a deer and a wolf. I swear I'm not making this up. That thing killed my friends and those women. After a few seconds, it stuck out its tongue and licked the symbols away. It went after the hurt redhead, Marie, first. It snatched her up by the legs and dangled her there for a second, before it took a bite from her ribs. I could hear its teeth tearing through her and crunch into her bones. She screamed so loud it made my ears ring, and all I could do was lay there and cry, waiting on it to be my turn. The woman with the claw marks on her face tried to run past it, while it was ripping through what was left of Marie. It pinned her to the wall with one hand, dropped what it was doing, then ripped off one of her legs and hurled it at Cassie, knocking her off her feet. Keep in mind this whole time I'm tied up and gagged. All I could do was watch. I never laid a hand on anyone. I didn't kill those people. I watched that thing tear those women apart. I don't know why it didn't kill me after it was finished with Cassie. It carved these symbols into my palms and cut me free. Then it just turned and left. I wandered around for days until the rangers found me. I can't remember how I got to the mountains or where our camp was, but I'm telling you that thing is out there. You should keep people as far away from that place as possible. End of recording. Abigail Myers was never charged with the 7 bodies that were recovered. Shortly after she was cleared of all charges, she vanished. There have been sightings of a woman fitting her description near the caves here at the preserve, and over the last 6 weeks, 3 people have gone missing. No bodies have been recovered at this point. Searches of the caves have turned up nothing. No signs of recent activity, but they were still looking. I was sweeping a new zone looking for any clues when a call came over the radio. Ranger Hale, this is Ranger Briggs. I need your assistance in Zone 3. I found something. Heather Briggs is a new ranger, but she has to be one of the most capable recruits I've ever seen. By the time I made it to Zone 3, Briggs was marking off the area and taking notes on everything she found. How's it going tonight, Briggs? What'd you find? I stopped short when I saw it. Briggs shook her head and smirked. Have you ever seen anything like this before? What was laying in the clearing was a bloody mound of hair and skin. There were no bones, no body, just skin and hair. She only found one set of footprints leading up to where the skin was found, but none leading away. We found clothing leading up to the side as if the person had been stripping as they came to the clearing. Other than that, there were no signs of anyone else being there. We called it in. Once the medical examiner and the state police showed up, we finally got a good look at the skin. It was like someone had removed it, like clothing. The only real damage was around the face and neck area, making it unidentifiable. All we knew for sure was it was a woman. One of the 3 missing hikers was a woman, so we were certain this had to be her. We couldn't have been more wrong. The DNA came back to Abigail Myers. Briggs got the news before I did, and when she told me, I couldn't believe it. So you're telling me Myers came all the way out here to kill herself? That doesn't make sense. Of all people, that lady would have never come back here. This has to be a joke. You're messing with me, right? Briggs chuckled and handed me the paperwork. Nope. It's a 100% match, but it gets weirder. They found unknown animal hairs inside the skin suit along with most of her teeth. This shit is bizarre. According to the report, the skin was removed so clean that the person could have still been alive when it was removed. That file stayed on my mind for the rest of the day. We searched sector by sector and couldn't find a trace of anyone. By sundown, I was exhausted and decided to crash at the ranger station for the night. I tossed and turned all night. I couldn't get that file off my mind. I finally gave up on sleep and stepped outside for a smoke. I stood there staring up at the night sky when I noticed something was off. It was quiet. The woods are never silent, but I swear I couldn't hear a sound. A breeze drifted in, carrying a scent that was unmistakable: rotting flesh, blood, and wet fur. A few years back, I found a deer that had been rotting in the sun for a few days, and this smell was 10 times worse. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something moving through the trees, but when I turned to get a look, there was nothing there. I looked around, scanning the area for any signs of movement, and as I turned back to my left, I saw a pair of eyes reflecting back at me in the dark. From where I was standing, they had to be at least 8 feet off the ground. I slowly backed inside and grabbed my rifle. When I stepped back to the door, it was gone. I stayed by that door until 6 a.m. When Briggs and 2 other rangers got there, the second they were checked in, I got in my truck and went home. It was my day off. I won't bore you with what I did all day and just skip to later on that night. Around 10 o'clock, I get a phone call from Briggs. "Hope I'm not disturbing you, but a lady just showed up at the station claiming to be one of the missing hikers. I thought you might want to talk to her before I call it in and the cops take her away." I was in my truck and headed for the ranger station in 5 minutes flat. When I got there, Briggs had the woman wrapped up in a blanket and drinking coffee in my office. "So what happened? She just showed up out of the blue?" Briggs gave me an odd look. "It was the strangest thing. I had just come in to file my reports for the day. I heard a knock at the door and there she was. There's no way I missed her on the way back in. It's like she appeared out of thin air." Before you go in there, I have to let you know, that woman has the same markings Abigail Myers described, tattooed on the back of both of her hands. I've already called the state police. Somebody will be here to pick her up soon. She says her name is Dawn Perkins. You've got maybe 20 minutes. Let me know what you find out. I took a deep breath and headed for my office. When I opened the door, I could tell she had been out in the wilderness for a few days. She was ripe. "Hello, Miss Perkins. I'm so glad to see you made it here. I'm Ranger Anthony Hale. If it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions." She nodded her head and sipped her coffee. "While you were lost, did you happen to see anyone else out there? We're looking for 2 men that went missing a few days before you, and any information you might have would be a great help." She took another sip and looked at me for a second. "No, I didn't see anyone out there." I stepped over to my desk and took a seat. "Okay, that's fine, no pressure. Could you tell me why you were out there and how you got lost?" Dawn turned and glanced out the window. "I came here to see the thing that took my sisters, and I was never lost. I followed that abomination to this station." I looked down at her hands. There it was, a triangle with 3 lines crossing through it. "What are those symbols on your hands? I've seen them before." She smiled and looked me right in the eye. "None of your business is what they are, and even if I told you, it wouldn't matter. No one's leaving here alive." I excused myself while getting up from my desk and went to speak with Ranger Briggs. When I stepped out of my office, she was on the phone. The second she hung up, I waved her over. "I need you to step outside and check the perimeter, then come back inside and lock the place down till her escort shows up." She gave me a concerned look and nodded her head. "Is everything all right? What's going on?" I didn't really have a way to explain it. "I'm not sure. Just let me know when you're done." I stepped back inside my office to find Dawn asleep on my couch, so I shut off the light, then went to the restroom. By the time I came back, Briggs was locking the main doors. "It's all quiet out there, but I'm pretty sure there's a dead animal somewhere close by. It smells horrible around the back of the building." The instant she said that, I thought about the other night. I put the thought out of my mind and started filling out paperwork. A few minutes later, the state police showed up. Since Briggs was technically the person who located Miss Perkins, I stepped outside and left her to handle all the details. The night air was still and that eerie silence was giving me a bad feeling. I stepped down into the parking lot and looked around, praying I wouldn't see those eyes staring back at me. A light breeze brought the faint odor of decay drifting in with it, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The sound of twigs snapping and leaves crunching put me on alert. I slowly made my way back to the door. By the time I was reaching to open it, that smell was so heavy in the air I could taste it. A low huffing sound cut through the silence as I flung the door open. Stepping inside, I slammed the door shut and locked it. I turned around to see everyone staring at me. One of the troopers was by my office talking to Dawn. The other was talking with Briggs near her desk. She looked at me, then glanced at the officer. "Is everything okay, Hale?" Before I could say a word, the lights went out. Dawn started laughing. "It's not going to stop until you're all gone. It wants the land." One of the troopers, I think his name was Atwell, chimed in. "What's going on here? What are you talking about?" Dawn walked over to the window and peeped out. "Wendigo. My sisters thought they could make a deal with it. They thought if they offered it a sacrifice, it would let them pass. The beast took them all, and when it was done, it chose another body. It'll keep going until nothing lives on this land." The second trooper stepped in my direction and asked me to unlock the door. I did as he asked and stepped aside as he opened it. "Come along, Miss Perkins, let's get you back to the city." When the door swung open, the room filled with that overpowering stink. The trooper scrunched up his nose and narrowed his eyes as he turned to get a look outside. He stepped out and looked around before turning back to us. "Nah, there's nothing out here. Now, if we're done playing games, can we please get on the road? I would like to be home before morning." Atwell escorted Dawn out to the van. Briggs handed over the rest of the paperwork, and I stood there staring into the woods. The moment the engine roared to life, something came charging out of the darkness and slammed into the side of the van, tipping it over on its side. The shock of what I was seeing made me stagger back and trip over some loose rock, falling flat on my ass. The sound of gunfire snapped me out of my daze when Briggs started shooting. I couldn't tell if bullets were hurting that thing or not, but it bolted off into the forest. I scrambled to my feet and ran over to the van. Briggs came and helped break out the windows so we could pull Atwell and Dawn from the van, but the other trooper had his arm pinned. We couldn't get him out. I heard Briggs yell, "Run, it's coming!" While I was in the van trying to free the trooper, he begged me not to leave him. I pushed as hard as I could against the dented metal that was holding him in place. When it finally gave, his arm slipped free, but it was too late. That thing crashed into the undercarriage, sending us both tumbling as the van flipped completely upside down. The trooper landed on my legs, and I landed sticking half out of the driver's side window. The trooper screamed and clawed at me as that thing drug him out through the passenger side and hoisted him into the air, dangling by one leg. Briggs and Atwell fired at the creature, but it ignored them as it grabbed the trooper's other leg and tore him in half. The sound a human body makes when it's ripped apart is indescribable, but seeing it was worse than watching heart, liver, lungs, and intestines splatter on the ground. It made me puke as I got up and ran for the station. Once I was inside, Briggs and Atwell locked and barricaded the door, then took up positions at the windows. Jesus Christ, what the hell was that thing? Atwell barked out while trying to spot the creature from the window. Dawn was sitting in an office chair on the other side of the room with a big smile on her face. She giggled and spun around in the chair. Briggs gave her an agitated look and then turned to me. "We need to lock her up." Atwell was trying to radio for backup, but all that was coming through was feedback. A loud boom shook the building and Dawn burst into laughter. I rushed over and grabbed a shotgun from the rack and started loading it. I had just dropped in the fourth shell when I heard Atwell yell, "Get back!" The front wall of the station cracked and gave way as that thing came rushing in. It lashed out and grabbed Atwell, who shot it in the face 3 times at close range, causing one of its eyes to explode. It snarled and threw him across the room. His body slammed into a wall before crashing to the floor. I started shooting when Briggs dove for cover. As the creature moved, its antlers tore away the ceiling, causing debris to rain down on everything. I fired my last shot just as Briggs opened up. Somehow, Atwell had gotten back on his feet and unloaded on that thing, but it wasn't working. It grabbed Briggs and brought her to its mouth, and in one quick motion, bit off her head before tossing her body aside. I could hear the loud crunching of its chewing of her skull, as it grabbed Atwell and slammed his body against the ground like a rag doll, until he burst, splattering most of the room with blood. The creature grabbed me and slammed me against the ground, just before I heard Dawn yell out, "Wait!" and it stopped. She walked over calmly and held up her right hand. The creature lowered its head and knelt down on one knee. Dawn slowly placed her hand on the creature's head, and as she did, the symbol on the back of it began glowing with dim red light. She screamed in pain as her left eye clouded over. I watched the creature's eye reform in its skull, before she turned to me and smiled while petting it. "Good girl, Abby. Now finish this up. We have work to do."